Okay. Everyone, welcome to Cloud Data Driven Online User Group Meeting. You know, the agenda is getting started database development with WSL2. By the way, I am Jean-Joseph, currently working as a data engineer. I've been in IT for 18 years. I'm located in New Jersey, originally from Haiti. And I thank you so much for me about what just happened today. Our rules are you guys are free to comment, but there must be no offensive comments. I have your phone, your videos turn off and microphone turn off. However, at the end of the session, I will give you access to unmute yourself to ask any questions. Feel free to connect with us on social media, and also our speaker for today is Carlos, and Carlos is a Microsoft Data Platform MVP, and also he's leading Guatemala SQL user group. We do have a couple more sessions lined up with his John Miner will present transitioning your TCO scale to Spark. I would highly suggest you to go and sign up. And also we have Dipti that will let us know exactly how can we go behind the magic of indexing SQL Server, right? If you guys have any question, feel free to let me know. And you all, if you guys want to present a session, feel free to reach out to me. Carlos, the floor is all yours.
Okay, just before I go, Joseph, I think that Armando wanted to ask something, so I don't know, because he couldn't unmute himself, so I don't know if he
Let
let
me
him.
unmute Armando, and then I'm gonna have him as a presenter. Oh, give me one second. Let me change the setting instead, so this way he can. If you want to present something, I will be happy to have to give him a chance to share your screen. Armando, feel free to share your screen.
No,
I'm
no,
sorry,
sorry.
feel
I don't want to delay us longer. I don't want to
free to
present
unmute
anything.
yourself and ask
Yeah, I don't want to present anything. I don't want to delay it
anything
as
you
longer.
want to.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Armando, I can hear you.
All right. Yeah, no, I was like, if I want to ask questions, how would I do? Because the microphone was not on. But John already explained that questions will be at the end. So
Okay.
sorry about that. I don't want to delay it anymore. Go ahead, take it over.
Thank you, thank you. So,
Thank you. And thank you so much, Carlos, for your presentation. It is an honor to have you here. Feel free to start with the presentation.
okay, let me know if you can see my screen now.
Yes.
Okay, let's start then. I'll not delay any longer. So, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me today. It's good to be here with you. So, today we'll talk a little bit about WSL and how to use it as a platform for development in your computer, right? So, let's go. My name is Carlos Lopez. I'm a Microsoft MVP data platform. I'm experienced in SQL Server from almost 2005 to all versions above. And as yourself have introduced myself, I'm a community leader for a data platform in Guatemala, also blogger, speaker. Here are my networks and the fields of experience, and I'm very excited person to work with Linux environment. So that's why I decided to use this approach to let people know that you can use the Linux side from a different perspective for Windows perspective. So if you want to chat with me, here are my networks, and you can feel free to reach me. Okay, so for today, this is the agenda. First, what is WSL? What are the features? The performance facts and history for and benchmarking for the product itself. and then we'll go right into it and prepare the environment on how to use configuration for WSL in the Windows machine, the requirements for it, and preparing your environment, the IDE and toolsets that you can use to interact with it, and a demo, of course, checking the environment, doing a little activity there, and using the toolset that we have discussed, and how it interacts with the Windows machines. So let's go. So what is the WSL2? But it is the Windows Subsystem for Linux version 2 layer that has the ability to complete the complete GNU subsystem over Windows, the GNU distros on Microsoft Store, so you can have whatever distribution you are comfortable with to work with, except that we're going to use Ubuntu for this particular one, because there are only you can use SUSE or Ubuntu for SQL Server, that is. So but if you want to use it in other products of open source products, you can use a different, or you can adapt it. The other product, the other feature that you can do is execute bash shell script transparently on your machine from the command line. You can use the RPM install, that is the binaries install for any distro. So RPM if you are using like a Fedora or something like that, but you can use a different tarball depending on what your distro is. So basically, from the beginning, if you have the complete menu, you can do whatever you like with the Linux, that is. So since you have the complete thing, you can execute the Linux binaries on Windows, and the feature or the cool thing on this second version is that you have a performance improvement on the file system, that is, compared with the first edition. The enhancement is everything. It is designed to work for this version, because Microsoft have put an effort in Hyper-V, design it to work with WSL, that is the Linux. And what is that exactly? Which it is a hypervisor running on your machine that can have a distro, a Linux. So there is nothing different that you know or have to know for a hypervisor, right? So what is the difference then if we already had that? Well, the difference is that Hyper-V design designed for this product has improved the interaction with the file system and the CPU kernel. So you can use all the libraries and APIs from Windows through your Linux. So you can have a better contact or interaction between both of you, both of worlds. So you are using the Hyper-V, right, in the Linux, but then you have a full compatibility with the kernel, with the Windows kernel, that is. So you don't have to use monowine, you don't have to use NS disruptor utils, you don't have to use any emulation of drivers to connect with your Linux there. You can interact directly with your Windows through your Linux. So it's more like it's the approach is going to use it transparently, but instead it's still Windows. You are on Windows, but as a look and feel on Linux. So you can use it both ways. So the features of WSL comparison between versions are that the integration and the fast boot times and small resource footprint, it's the same in both versions. However, in the VM world, VM management, that enhancement that has been done from Windows had improved in WSL2 because it's dedicated for it. Now in the WSL2 version, with it, all the Linux distros that are working for WSL are complete. so you can have the full kernel in Linux also, and the full compatibility with the is complete in the WSL2. Also, the only down thing is that you cannot now have compatibility with VMware or VirtualBox. That is other products that you could do that in WSL1, but Hyper-V, however, guaranteed you that you can use it optimally. You can use it better because it is designed for it. So the performance between OS has been improved. Sorry for the typo, because the X was the other way in the last one. So sorry about that. So let's talk about a little performance on the product that has been done by openbenchmark.org. So the geometrical mean test for the product shows that WSL2, we have 3 competitors here for the test, WSL, WSL2, and the bare metal and Ubuntu. So bare metal is always going to win in that aspect because it's not a virtualized environment. This is just an uninstall. So, but you will see that at the end, there are some metrics that are almost the same or virtually the same because you're using the Windows driver. So it is very fast. So in comparison, WSL2 here, the results are better in geometrical mean for all tests. So that's a good thing. And the other specifics on RDBMSs, they have tested it with SQLite product and have encountered that the fewer responses, the time that responds, the WSL2 takes less time to respond than WSL1. If you see here, it's very ridiculous. That is 3 times faster. That is because the I/O and CPU were designed for it, and also the API calls for the systems are better. So definitely, if you're not virtualizing, you are directly using the OS, you will be better. So that is only, if you see, the comparison is almost the same with the Ubuntu bare metal, so that's a good number. They have tested with NoSQL with Redis. For the test is the use of disk or the SADD. The batch request per second is very fast for WSL, so it is attending very fast the calls. So that is a good number. In comparison with the bare metal, it's almost the same. So it is a good number. Sorry. That benchmark for SQL Server itself, but for product, because it was launched last year and it was launched for open source open products with open benchmarking. So we don't have that metric, but we'll use the same tooling for Windows that we use to determine that. So that we don't have that name to publish the numbers, but it is good to know that we can use all the products that we always use and see the good results. Okay, so just as a reference, here is the timeline for a Docker on Windows product, and why the reason that I put Docker here is because we are working Linux as a container environment to use WSL. So it is good to know the evolution that the product had on Windows, that is Docker on Windows, because in the first version they had only they use a unikernel and microkernel to use a host hypervisor to use the VirtualBox. And the first version we only have Docker machine and Docker Compose, but in the first version, we only had this host that was called boot to Docker and was very limited Linux to manage all the containers. So it is not the same experience that we had on Linux or we had in other environments, cloud, for example. So because we didn't have the whole product. By the end of the second version, which is Docker at 2018, when we have the CE2 version, when they had the capability to Kubernetes and Docker Compose and all, and then the kernel, the Linux kernel, changed to use the boot to Docker version, which is still on Hyper-V and VirtualBox, but very limited microkernel to create unikernel versions of the containers. It didn't have the complete features that allows you to do more stuff that you wanted. So with the evolution of the product and enhancement with Docker and integrated with WSL, you can use the complete Linux environment, and that is a difference for Windows users. So you're not using a little design version design just to do a Docker. Instead, you are using the complete Linux, so that's better. So you have these 4 layers in the past that you had the CLI connection to the Docker CLI and the Docker client with the Docker engine. So to get to the Docker core, you had to go down from PowerShell, then you have to use the Docker Hub machine, and then you have to have the hypervisor, and then you have the core to have the calls that the command that you are your declarative mode looking for. So in this mode, you are eliminating these layers and to communicating directly with the hypervisor because the WSL is transparent. So you are making it faster, and Docker is efficient to work with it. So it's better to do it this way now. So let's talk about a little bit of preparation of your environment and how to configure WSL to use SQL Server. So yeah, the first is that you need a Windows 10 version, 2004. Now it is on Windows Home versions. So the only requirement that you do is to have it updated. And then the other is that you have to have 64-bit machine, but it's already in everything machine and every machine. And the BIOS, you have to have set it to work with Hyper-V, but this is the limitation that you have to control. Every machine had it right now, so that's no worries. And you have to enable through PowerShell using the deployment image service and management tool to enable the feature. You have to select the feature and say you want Microsoft Windows Subsystem Linux, and you don't then I put it the second step as to install the Docker desktop. This is a requirement because we are working with containers. However, you can do it for other purposes, as we say, but for this scenario, you install Docker. And the third step is to configure to set it as version 2, which is the declarative mode, putting the parameter set version and distro name. In this case, the distro that you have in your machine, when you place the verbose and the list, you will show how the name of the distro appears, and you copy it here and change it to place it here and enter. So by doing these 2 steps, you will set the default version to WSL2 and to your distro that you have named. Here is the how it looks when you use the WSL declarative list and verbose. So you can see that it's running and what version is running. So if you have to change one, you have to you will change your WSL. Then when you enter, you will see some performance facts that the box shows you, but you will see it better when we are on the machine. Okay. So what are the facts? I have prepared a little bit of pros and cons of using containers and not using containers. So so in my perspective, thinking of pros, well, it's using a containerized environment is always a pro here at this moment in technology, because we are faster to build something, right? So instead of dedicated mode, another approach is you're preparing yourself for microservices technology, sorry, and you are focusing on that. And for that matter, if you are using these two, it's obvious that you are trying to use the best of it, that is using the approach of DevOps culture. You're trying to push it through to that culture to try to use the best that you can to use it faster. In use SQL for a DevOps world is very exciting because it allows you to use everything that you have for to do it. And the other is as a result of these three, you are preparing yourself, your code, that is, infrastructure as a code search, because you're in search of doing that. You're preparing your environment to be agile, to be very fast, and using SQL Server for it. So that's good. And as cons, I thought that that'll be like learning path to do to specialize your knowledge, not only for dedicated product, but you have to have a little knowledge of networking, a little bit of operative systems, and then you have to know command shells and not everything. You'll be a little bit more not just dedicated on that data, but dedicated on other tools. So that complexes the layers a little bit, but at the end, I think that if you're in search of this, it's for a good thing. And this a standalone isolated versus couple or decoupled, I put it as a con, because at the end you're trying to understand. There's uh, paradigm here. If you are trying to adapt to a decoupled platform, but that depends on your solutions at the end. So isolated versus coupled, that's a question that you have to do yourself to your environment, that is. But if you can, that it may allow you to use other kind of technologies. So at the end, it depends, always depends on your scenario. So I have put another slide here to identify problem for the WSL at the moment. It is that for those of you that know Linux, you know that systemd is a daemon that you require to use to use for the system run level. However, here we have an issue that systemd isn't proven completely for the product. There are ways to do it, to enable it, but you have to create scripts and go behind the scenes to do it. And there in the community there are responses to do it. In fact, there are like 3 approaches to do it, but at the end there are no direct solutions for it. So what is the problem here right now for us SQL servers? The problem is that if we want to use an install of the SQL Server as Linux binaries in the WSL, we can't, because the installer requires systemd. So we're forced to use containers, because systemd is not working. So you cannot you cannot create a SQL Server install and dedicated for Linux in your machine. Instead, the only one that can do it is a container environment, because it is using all of the preparation of the image that's already working. So the problem here is the systemd. So when that scenario is solved, you can install it as you desire. If you want a SQL Server Linux dedicated version, complete version for it, you can do it as it is. So to enhance it there, I put it some approaches that you can do to try to escalate the systemd. But at the end, this is not proven scenario, and in the documentation, the Microsoft documentation, it is not recommended path, or at least there are no notes to do it. So you're on your own there. So I don't recommend. I think that the only way to use right now WSL is with the containers. So for this scenario, what we will do is to use the Ubuntu LTS 20.04 version, set the Docker and Ubuntu configuration, and install the SQL Server itself in the containers environment using the images that are already in the Docker Hub and the Microsoft portal. So in order to do that, you have to go in settings. You have to go in general and select to use the WSL2 technologies, and then you're ready to go. You can also, in the second slide, I'll show you, can select the resources that you will use. You can see here when you click the refresh button, if you have more than one, you can put yourself what versions or what distros do you want that Docker manage your containers with WSL. If you want, you can use only one or two or three, depending on how many distributions you have on your machine. But that's a cool thing because you can test what happens with using WSL and not using WSL. I have some pointers to defining the best practices that you can do when you're working with containers. And the first one I identified is that you can define a SQL Server in a container Docker file. That's a best practice, because if you want to do a repetitive scenario, a Docker file, it's a better solution or a better approach than doing a declarative mode every time that you're working on it. However, I'll show in a matter of this demonstration, I'll show the scripting to create the Docker run without using a Docker file, but I have the Docker file there. So I'll show the two differences there because it saves you time also. The second time is always create a volume dedicated to a SQL container for your data, that is, because if you have a dedicated volume, your data can persist in terms of declarative mode working with your containers. If you destroy your container, your data is gone. And it's not that if you're working with containers, you know that this is not a persistent mode. Maybe you want it for testing, so that's something that you can data that you can miss. However, you have to have if you want to use it for scenarios that you don't want to miss your data, it's good to have always a volume dedicated, because instead when you destroy your container, the volumes will be there, so your data is there. There are other techniques to have your attachments again for your container, so that's good. Always build and test your Docker container as a SQL image. And that's a good thing. Create your SQL image with your tool sets, with your binaries, and just to put it again to create another or different versions of it. So that's a good thing to have all the binaries prepared, because you can install it. And as more advanced user in your environment, you can convert a Git repository with GitHub or other product, or a Git in your machine. Run an image as a container, and you can use ACI, that's Azure Container Instance feature, pull container into your repository. So when you have all these, you can work in your machine with your Linux, and you can pull all the declarative mode to send all your containers and Docker images directly to your Azure with the ACI, because it can show it helps you to be as a stage scenario and your machine for testing, and here it can be as your other scenario to work with with more people. So it can help you to have all these features, to have all prepared. So the way to use it on the environment, or the tools that we have, is Visual Studio Code. I'll just work there at 80% of the time. Visual Studio Code with WSL extension to get into the environment directly. The SQL Server Visual Studio Code extension to connect with the databases. The Azure CLI tools to connect to the Azure, just to show you how it seems, or how it shows the approach for the CLI tools. And the Docker VSC extension, the Visual Studio Code, to handle and manage my containers inside my machine. And others, I can, these are visual forms to see. I have the Azure Data Studio and the SSMS to see the containers, the data, and the SQL Server's containers, and see the data itself. So let's go to the demo right now and hover the tool and see what we have right now. I don't know if you have any questions at the moment before I go to the test part. John, are you there? Or do we do it at the end, as you prefer?
Yes, I'm here. I would highly suggest if you can carry on. So, the
Okay.
time is, yes, okay,
Limited.
perfect. Thank
Okay, sure.
you. Okay.
No worries. Okay, first, now let's see. I hovered. Okay. Here I have the if you see Microsoft Store here, you can see the WSL product. If you search it for it, you will see that there are many distributions already in it, so you can test a variety of products there. So depending on what you feel comfortable with. And let's go. So to open the Visual Studio Code and use the feature that I have enabled, which is the WSL for the Visual Studio Code, I use the Windows terminal. And I prepare it with a particular declarative mode to call the code, use the parameter remote, specify my distribution, and it will open and set it to this environment. If we are not sure of what names of our distributions we have, we can always check here. And we'll see that we have a different and the state of it, and we'll see that the ones that we want to use. So we can check the name, place it here, and use the remote parameter to open the Visual Studio Code, and we'll open and set as what that we want. Also, the cool thing about using this is that you can always find it here if you want. You can declarative mode it directly to it, and you will be on WSL directly. So no worries there. So you can do it in different ways. So I'm doing it here because it is better understanding if for us here to see the code. I'll just zoom it a little bit. If you okay, so we already seen these three codes. Now we will check directly on Docker usage. If you are on, now that you are on your Linux and that version, you can always check the version in use, the Linux commands that already these are standard Linux commands to show you the version and all that you need to know about of what you are root, and you have all the permissions to connect with it. you can see the file systems. That's the M tab here. You can see the file systems here and see the permissions that your mounts, data mounts have. This particular house is the WSL. The data mount already has the read and write, remount, and it is already mounted. So when you install, you don't have to worry about configuring your file systems on Linux. It already works on that, and it is transparent to you. So it is a good thing for us because as a users, it saves a lot of time. So for this particular scenario, I'm showing the Docker images that I already have in my own Docker environment, that I have already created an image with all the features that I am showing you here in a Docker file that I have set in the past, and the two distributions, the 2019 version of SQL Server and the 2017 versions. So I'm playing around with these versions and with my own changed. But at the end, you have the ability to see and to show all the versions. Also, I have this NVIDIA CUDA, that is, which is a feature that allows you to use all the CPUs on your machines. I have dedicated a blog for it. I'm creating for it. But to use CUDA for SQL Server, to use all NVIDIA for NVIDIA users, you can use all the vCores on your card, that is the GPU, and you can use it here. I also have the way to use it in the containers. So the other way to see it is in the Docker. You can see the containers here. The approach is the same that you use in the Docker image. Sorry about that. I don't want it that. You can see the containers. You can see the images. This is the visual way to do it. Another way, because we only, if you are lazy that day and you don't want to code, you can do it. So you can stop it, start it, and there we go. So let's go and talk about how to create a simple Docker run with a container dedicated for our SQL Server. First, you have to use the parameters for port to create a tunnel from the host and the guest. I always use the same port because it is less complex. However, I have more examples both down there to show that you can change the port. Here you can change the name of the container. That'll be the name of the container containing your SQL Server. The way that you're executing is privileged permissions, and you will have the IT with the TTY, or the way to interact with the console commands. Then you will have to explain or detail the SA password, and you can put yourself there, the password, and accept the EULA. You see, then once we have declared all these parameters, we have to specify a way to connect with volume. And then there are two different approaches to do it. One is using the parameter volume, and the other is to use the mount bind. So for Docker, now is recommended to use mount instead of volume. But I have the examples to show you there are two ways. In the volume way, you have to show first the host path that is on mount C and the user desktop. You see, this is the path in the Linux way, because we are connecting in the Linux to connect to the host that is in desktop and SQL backups. There is the SQL backups folder, and then I want to use the local container environment, which is in the mount share that I have created. I want to create there a folder path to be the target. So this is the way to do it in volume. However, it's a little bit messy and complicated to understand at the beginning. So I think that it can help you to understand it differently if you use the same. Here we have the same than above, except that in the we're using mount instead of volume. Here, if you use mount, we can bind it. We can specify the source. The source will be our share volume, and the destiny will be the target in the container. But as we saw, we need, if we are creating mount, if we are saying a share volume, or here a source, we for this scenario, we have to create a shared volume then. So here is the commands to create a Docker volume. You simply say Docker volume create and specify the number that you're using. And you can always show what the volumes that you have shared in your environment. Here are all that I have, the volumes for 2019 and the 17. I just called it full. So I'm using the 17 and I'm creating and I'm putting mount SQL as a local folder inside the container. So that's another approach. I think that's a little bit better explained there. And I have another example here. Oh, just a quick reminder here. At the end, you have to place in every Docker run, you have to create a declaratively way to say the image that you are selecting. So if I go to my images, let's see, I can see my Microsoft images. Oh no, it's a little bit longer here. But here you have the number inside parentheses, and you can declare the first 4 letters there are representing the image that you're using. So I'm using D04F. So that means I'm using the 2017 latest here that I have. So that explains that you only have to declare the first 4 letters from the image to select it. You can always use the command here to use Docker images here. And you can see it here, the complete command. But this is like more a simpler way to just have a glance. Okay, now that we have discussed the creation of the Docker volume and the assignment of the Docker volume to the share folder that you are selecting, now you can use the Docker run to create it with the mount, and that will use the volume that you have dedicated to it. The next example, the difference that I have put here, let's see. I think that I just tested here a different volume. No, let's see, except EULA. Oh, I see. In this example, I changed the parameter to use MS SQL SA password because it had changed. It is more recommended now. It had changed to MS SQL SA to use it in the Docker images, depending on what if your images is you are using the new images. And sometimes it won't let you use SA password. You have to use MS SQL SA password. I specified it as it is. So I put it intendedly as that to show you that there are difference, and that can show you an error when you create, depending on the version of the container that you're using. On the image, sorry, and the image that you're using. So here are the same scenarios, except that I'm changing version to 2019. So this is another example. I'm using mount, I'm using another name, I'm using the same port, except that I'm changing from version. So you have and this example is the 2019, but using the GPUs. Unfortunately, here I'm using a virtualized machine having Linux, Windows. Sorry, I don't have here I'm not using a physical machine that has NVIDIA here, so this GPU doesn't work. But this is the way that you can have, if you have the CUDA installed and the libraries installed, you only have to specify the GPUs, and there you can use that power. Okay, so let's go and see the Docker status for my machine. You can see it at Docker PS. Let's see. I have these two containers. I have it running for 2 hours for our scenario right now. I'm using the 2017 with the image D04F, and one funny interesting thing is that this is, if you see, the OPT same path, because for all images is the same, right? So you're using the same images and you are preparing all your environment there. Even if you are configuring the Docker volume, it says that is in a local space. However, you have changed it from SQL from Docker perspective. These commands I have tested it here just to show you how it looks from your Linux. Where are our paths to check out? First command, we're checking out the desktop for backups, which is the Windows environment. The second one is the queries that we're using in the desktop. That is, but we're querying it from our Ubuntu, right? Because this is not a Windows command. However, in PowerShell works, but this is Linux. Okay, I show you that in the version when we connect it. Here is the root. Also, when you we are seeing the third part is where the WSL in the mount WSL Docker desktop bind mounts, where are located the path for the actual container location. This is the container location for the desktop Ubuntu for the WSL. So the first two shows Windows folders. The third shows you the container environment, and the third shows you the WSL itself. That is the host, right, for the WSL. So the important thing is that for our scenario, what we'll do is to copy in some part of the script further, we'll copy all the backups and the queries that we have in our Windows, copy it into the container folder, and do the scenario that what we'll create is a copy of the backups and a copy of the queries and put it there. So what we have is a refresh operation to copy the backups, the SQL backups, and do the restore. Perform the refresh and do the scripting to do it. So everything we'll do is in here in the transportation script that I'll show you right now. Transport script, the script is here. Let's see, transport. What it does is, sorry for the mess. It doesn't look like very pretty here, but it does the trick. What it does first is to copy the files, as I told you before. Copy the files from the let's see. Okay, copy the files from the Windows environment to your container, doing a cp command, doing an echo to show you this in the also it will create a file for each operation that we'll do to create a log with a date. Then we'll create a copy script to copy all let's see, copy to the Docker mount point and do the operation to a log also. And the third part we'll do is give permissions to give the permission to the Destiny. This is just a matter of example that you can do another kind of operations that Linux can allows you to use grant permissions to a file, set operations, and put your log, and then unzip a file or zip a file, sorry, that we have a back and create a zip if you want to zip it, and then put a log. So that's what a transport log do. So when we execute it, this operation is called transport, and then we can see the log of the operations. So I'll execute it. So let me clear my screen right now. Okay. This example will do the transportation. That's the bash. It did it, and when we see the tail operations, we can see all the logs, the tail logs that and what have been done there. So it copied the mirror files, it back files, it have placed the grant permissions there, and had created the log as we have stated, and also have copied all the SQL that we require to execute later, and we are ready to go to do the next step. And the next step is now that we have copied into our Docker, let's test the Docker, the SQL Server container, just to check the version and the SQL Server running there. So hold on. This is just to see that it's already that is running, and this is a way to do it. You can use the SQL command, always the same binaries that we have for the SQL Server, but in your container. This is the path of your container, opt ms SQL tools bin. For every container that you create, every time that you use exec command in Docker, and explaining in what container are you executing this this command exec. So we're executing in Daltonio's container, and we're running the SQL command to that is on the default path here, and we are using the user SA with the password that we have set, and we are selecting the query just to show the version and the server name. So in the server name, we'll see the Docker image here, you see. So this is the way that is shown and the version that we're using. Okay, so nothing new here except for the way to connect. So the next step that we'll do for our test here is to do a refresh. So I think a way to show, to execute the same way, the SQL command, 3 different queries. The one that does a SQL restore, and the second, it does the SQL inspect query, and the third one is the SPE reader or log to show that you can use it that way. And all the 3 commands will it will show you on our screen. Okay, so I'll execute it not to lose any time here. So I'll execute the SQL refresh. Hold on. So here we'll see first. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't explain what it does. First, we'll test the backup sets that we have copied into our source, from our source, sorry, and then do the restore. But the funny thing, I use a backup from a Windows 2012 version and restore it in a container on a Linux version, and it's doing an upgrade and a changing version to 2017 version for SQL Server. So it is doing the upgrade right now and restoring. Then I did the DBCC check for the integrity, and I checked then I created a script for the security, for applying the security for the database itself. So show this right now, just what it does. It is just as a matter of example of what can you do with SQL Server in Linux. So let's see. First is the restore here. As I told you, what it does is do the verification only from the disk files. So it shows that the backup is good, and then it does the actual restore for the databases, explaining the location where I'm putting it to the actual path that I'll put it, and then the integrity check for the VCC check. That's what it does, this script. Then the second command was the SQL security. What it does is create 4 logins for a specified database, creating the grants and accepting the roles for the grant. At the end, I think I put it. Okay, yeah. What I do here is to verify that there are no orphans users. Do an octofix for orphan users and check that there are no orphans. So that's what it does in the security part. And SQL query inspect, and then I run this. But this is we'll run it in a different environment because I see that it's already messy there. What I do is a read error log and the show you the SQL uptime and show you the versioning and all the properties that the engine has, the restore activities, and the backups. But the backups are right now I'm not interested in, so just the restore. So what I'll do here is to run it, and here let me execute it. It will ask you to put some parameters for the connection. Hold on. That is show you the SP read error log. Since this is a file, you have to go to the bottom and check out the latest one. Here are the VCC check made, the restore that we did, and all the information, right? But since it is a little bit complex to read, I'm going to change to the SSMS to see it in a different way. Sorry, this is another example. This is a local host. This is a different key. So I'm connected to the same container, and I'm going to run the same query, except that I'm going to use the version that I have in my Windows. What I'll do is to open the query. Okay, so we see it different here, but this is the same data. We're just changing the way that we look things. So that was the thing that was I was telling you about. The physical name is the same location as we are seeing is the same default path. However, we have created a dedicated folder for it. So it says it is on the container location, but it has changed because we are using Docker volume. So that's a good thing to notice. Here is the versioning, and here are the restores. So you can look at what we have done. These are the databases and the attempts that the restore times that we have done every time that we have run the refresh. And this is the scenario. John, how are we? Another example, or we have finished there?
To be honest, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear it.
Yeah. To be honest with you, if you can, skip some of the demos,
No
that
problem.
would be great. But share this script with me, and I will share it with the team.
Definitely,
So this
definitely.
way they can,
I do have
you know,
everything in my blog. So if you want to go, sorry for the timing. I wanted to show you the same in the Azure Container instance, but it wasn't. There were no
you
time.
you can go for another 5 minutes. You can go straight
Okay.
to the Azure containers. That would be great.
Okay. So the ACI creation for it, here it is. Very, very fast. Okay. Let's see. No, I have another version for it. Sorry, but it changed me from versioning. I think that it failed. Hold on, because I didn't have that little of code. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that. It was very fast and all. I have to check. Okay, yeah, this is it. So for the ACI, you can create your resource. You need a resource group, and you need a location, and you can use the declarative mode to create a Azure group to create, and then you have to have your container registry. You have to select the create, and then you can create your ACR login for it, and then create your container. The way to create your container is almost, if you see, it's the same. It's the same that Docker has. The only exception is that you are using AC container create, and specify the resource group, the name of your container, the image that you are selecting from the image that you have on Azure, not on your local machine, and then the environment. That's it. This is what you must have, and then it will show you. Let's see. A JSON file here for the container list, having all the resources for what you have created. But this is, this is a declarative mode if you want to see the JSON file, but there are other ways. You can always use if you use this Docker, you can go to registries, and you can go to the Visual Studio Code, and you can see the images there also. You can see here, I have the there are other ways. Now Azure have other let's see, hold on, I'll show you another Visual Studio Code that I have on my machine, not on this one, because I don't have this installed here. But on my machine I have the Azure, and you can see the Azure features. You can see all the virtual machines that you have. You can see your functions and the storage, and you can go and check out. Oh, it disconnected. Oh, all right, because I'm connected in the other machine, disconnected from here. But in using the Azure, you can see it better here. You have better visualized way to check out everything and see it better. So sorry for not preparing to this part, to not having this in a visual way to so I don't know, is there time for questioning directly for any particular issue that you have on my explanations, or are you gonna go through anything?
I think let's get at least 2 questions if there are any. If there's any, if you guys have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
Hey, Carlos, Armando here.
Hello, Armando. How are you?
Hey, great presentation. Thank you very much for sharing all of that. I'm actually in the middle of having fun in a project with SQL in a container in ACI. So
Okay.
in your last demo, you did not mount any storage for persistent databases, right?
No, I did not. No,
Okay.
I haven't used persistent database. No, no.
Okay, then just making sure. Yeah, I'm setting that up. I was hoping you would show, but that's fine. Thank you.
No, no worries. No, I didn't have time to prepare that part, but yeah, as you say, that's another way to do it, and that's a better approach. But this is more focused on cloud, right? On Azure.
Sure, 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 sure. Yeah, no, it was great. Thanks for the demonstration. I learned a lot.
No problem. No problem. Another question? Okay.
I
Okay.
think
We're covered
carry on.
there. Well, then I just wanted to let you know that every utility that we use, it's a Kubernetes, Docker, Podman, microkh, that is Ubuntu. Everything use containerd because Docker is changing, Kubernetes is changing. Everything is shifting to containerd. For us that we're using SQL Server, we're not that interested, or we don't have to know that, or we don't care that much because it's on the background of these container applications. But the thing is that Docker is shifting. I mean, every Kubernetes is changing. That is the reality, and containerd is changing. The Docker shim that we all used in the first version is not longer being used for everything, and containerd is the new thing for everything. So that's just less as a comment. And at the end, we're only using the Azure as it is, which is using the Kubernetes or Kubernetes 2 version, and that's it. Minikube, that's another way to use it if you're using Mac, but at the end, you're using containerd. The important notes for the session is that WSL2 is a best choice to manage Docker SQL containers in Windows, for Windows. And the WSL2 file system management improved substantially the SQL containers for I/O in Windows. So that's a good thing to use if you're using containers in Windows. And always use dedicated volume for your containers if you're using Docker. So we already passed that, and here are the material for the session. Here are my GitHub, here the Docker resources for it, the Kubernetes, and also 2 books that I recommend. One is from Hayden Barnes, so already he is also an MVP. He has dedicated a Pro Windows Subsystem for WSL, and another is for a Docker Captain that have dedicated Docker on Windows. So with both, I think that you can have material to understanding all these environment itself if you want to go deeper. So that is it, and thank you very much for your time here.
Thank you so much, Carlos. That was an amazing session, right? And I learned so much from it. I'm about to share my screen.
Okay.
Hey, before you share your screen, can I ask Carlos to move back 1 slide so I can screenshot those tips?
Okay.
Sure.
Hold on.
And then, Carlos, would you mind to share your contact info with me so this way I can,
Sure.
share it across? Perfect.
I put a QR code there if you want to take a screen there.
Right.
Thank you, Carlos. Yeah,
No
and I
worries.
love the Yoda logo on the corner, the silhouette. That's super cool.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like creating your watermark. Okay.
Right.
Cool.
Okay, thank you so much all for tuning in. And then I would love you to go and reserve your spot for our next presentation. I hope you all have a good day or great evening. Thank you one more time, Carlos, for your amazing session. And then this is the end. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.